In today's card project, I am going to be using a layering stencil on top of a stamped background to give it kind of a mixed media look. Hi everyone, I'm Mindy Eggen and welcome to my channel. Be sure to subscribe, like, and share this video with your friends. Now let's take a look at some of the supplies I'll be using today. Starting with the Cottage Garden bundle from Concord 9th, Just Saying die set, and the script bold print from Hero Arts. The first thing that I'm going to want to do is stamp my background. So I have my Misti here. I removed the foam insert and removed the backing on my red rubber stamp. Now it is a script background, so I want to make sure that I'm placing it in my Misti correctly. Once I have that down, I'm going to pick it up with the door of my Misti and then place a little bit of repositionable tape on the back of my white cardstock. I'm going to do my best to make sure that it is lined up straight because with a script, I really do want to make sure it's straight when I stamp it down. And then I can close the door of the Misti and my cardstock is going to stick to my paper in my Misti. Next, I'm going to ink this up with the Concord 9th Pebble Ink. So this has kind of a brownish gray tone to it. It is really great for stamping a subtle background. I'm going to stamp down the background and it actually does give me a great first impression. But since I already know I wanted to do some stenciling over the top of it, I am going to ink it up again just to make sure it's really going to stand out. I think black would be a little bit too harsh, so I'm a big fan of this pebble color. Now, once I have this stamped down, I'm going to bring in my layering stencil, and that is the Cottage Garden. Now, it is part of a bundle, or you can purchase it separately. It is a layering stencil. There's 3 pieces to it. Now, you can see that top right corner has kind of a fine area up there. So I was trying to think the best way to hold that stencil down, and I thought it was a great chance to bring in one of my waffle flower grip mats. Now, the material of these you may have seen in other videos is very similar to a stamp, and it is protected with some plastic sheets. So I'm going to remove one side, and on the other side of it, I already have one of the plastic kind of grid sheets that you can place in the back. And then I just stuck a piece of white cardstock underneath so you can see it here on screen. This is really great for lining up my cardstock like I have here. I just placed it within that A2 size grid area. Then I can bring in the first layer of the stencil, which has the most open areas of the flowers, and I'm going to really push down around those edges. I want to do multiple shades of flowers on my card front. So I have Pink Lemonade and Sweet Pea, Nectar and Sorbet, Buttercup and Sunflower, Tidepool and Oceanside, and then I'll also be bringing in Wheat and Avocado. So the whole thing I want to do here is start with a light color for this first layer of the stencil. I'm going to bring in a Post-it note and mask off areas that are a little bit too close together so that I don't kind of get my pink over to where I don't want it. And now this is the Pink Lemonade, which is one of my favorite colors out of the Concord 9th ink collection. I'm using a blending brush and I'm going to blend over the first flower up in that top corner. You can see how that grip mat is really holding that down, which was the whole reason I brought it in. I normally either use tape to hold my stencils down or a magnetic surface, but I was a little worried with the fine areas of that top corner that my other surfaces just weren't going to cut it. But this grip mat really did the trick. So the second flower I did there, I ink blended in Nectar. Now the bottom corner here, I am bringing in Buttercup. So that is my lightest shades for the flowers. And then in that top left-hand corner, I'm going to bring in Tidepool. And I have a little scratch piece of paper down in the bottom right-hand corner that I'm tapping my ink off of a little bit because I knew Tidepool was going to come in kind of strong. So I tapped off so I could get just a light color down. Then I'm just going to carefully peel away the stencil away from that grip mat and bring in the second layer of the stencil. So I lined this up by the centers because this part masks off the centers of the flower. So I lined that up, pushed down really well so my stencil was really stuck to that grip mat. And then I'm bringing in the darker shades here. So this one here is going to be Sweet Pea, which is super bright and gorgeous. The next color is going to be Sorbet. Then for the yellows, I will be bringing in Sunflower, and for my blues, I'm using Oceanside. Now, since this is the last layer for the flowers, I wanted to kind of step up that ink blending a little bit. And I started with my second flower there that has the sorbet. For this, I'm going to bring in a little bit of the sweet pea with a small blending brush. And I'm just going to very, very lightly start in the center and work my way out. Sweet pea can be a very strong color, so it's kind of smart to kind of tap off a little bit. You can always bring in more color if you don't have enough. For the yellow flower, I brought in the sorbet, and then I did bring in an extra color. This is fig, and I'm going to add that over the Oceanside color that I had just done. And I'm also going to add a little bit of that fig over my pink flower up and top. Now, you don't have to use this many colors. I just really wanted to put my ink pads to use because I have full set syndrome. So I make sure that I have all the inks. And I think it's just really nice to add all those different shades in there. But you could definitely get away with this using one color. Or if you're not ready to jump into the large ink pads, you could always get the ink cubes, which would work really great for this as well. Now this is the third layer of the stencil, and this one has the greenery and also the center of the flowers. For the greens, I'm going to be using Avocado. I was trying to get it so it was darker on one side and lighter on the other, making sure to always kind of tap off because it can come in pretty intense. And then for the center of the flowers, I'm using wheat. Now wheat, it's really great. I love the color, but once again, I wanted to kind of step it up and add a little bit more depth to it. So here I brought in Nutmeg. Now also keep in mind that I love ink blending. So when I buy colors, I tend to go all or nothing, and same thing with blender brushes, but you don't need to have as many as I do to get this look. I peeled off that stencil, and then to peel it off the grip mat, I'm just going to pick this up and kind of bend my mat a little bit. It's very flexible, and I can just peel my cardstock right off. So since I was kind of going for a light mixed media look, I'm going to add splatters, and I'm bringing in the black Soot Distress Spray Stain. I add a little bit to my work surface. I'm going to wet my brush, kind of pick up some of that water with the black soot, and then flick this over the background. Now I have this in a Splat Box, and I'm actually tapping off a lot onto the edge with my paper towel and slowly bringing it in. Because of the size of the paintbrush I'm using or the type of paintbrush I'm using, I'm getting some pretty big splatters, which is fine. Now I'm going to bring in, this is a mica type of watercolor set. It's from Ayuli. Not exactly sure of the pronunciation, but they have some gorgeous watercolor sets over there. So I have this kind of coppery tone that I added a little bit of water to, and then I'm going to flick this onto the background. Now you're not going to see it too much on camera just yet, but there is a ton of shine in that mica watercolor that I just added to it. And you can already see that that Distress Spray Stain that I added is a little diluted from the water, so it's not quite as crisp and black as it could be. For the sentiment for the front of the card, I die cut out this Just a Note, which is from the Just Saying die set. I die cut it out 3 times from Concord 9th black cardstock. I'm using my Connect glue that I have in a fine tip bottle to add dots of glue to the back and then adhere those together for dimension. And the shadow layer I did from some vellum. To make this kind of pop off the background a little more, there's 2 ways you can really do this. You can cut some thin foam strips like I'm doing here, or you could die cut out a few more of the Just a Note out of black cardstock and layer it behind the vellum. I just went for trimming down some thin foam strips and adding them behind the thicker parts of the letter. Then I'll just remove the backing of those foam squares, and I can use my tweezers to kind of help guide me to the front of the card and making sure that my margins are even on each side of the sentiment. Now I couldn't finish this off without using one of my favorite assortments, and that's the Dewdrop assortment from Concord 9th. I use my Place and Pierce tool from Simon Says Stamp to pick them up and attach with a little dot of that liquid glue. And then once I bring a closer look at this, you can almost see the shine in that mica, but it's definitely way better in person. I am so happy with how this card turned out. I definitely want to try doing layering stencils on top of stamped backgrounds more often. And this is a mixed media card, even though you may not have really labeled it that way. I hope you enjoyed today's video and will give this technique a try. I will have all of my supplies listed down below in the video description and over on my blog. Thank you so much for joining me today.